You're watching Telesur. This is from the south, from our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Let's begin with our news. We start with Brazil, where social movements are organizing their first national protest against the president-elect, Jair Bolsonaro. The demonstrators began to gather at the end of the afternoon in São Paulo's main avenue. Hundreds of organizations have promised to step up their resistance to the rise of fascism in Brazil, in spite of their defeat at the polls.
Why are you here today?
I am here today to fight against fascism in Brazil and all around the world.
As a woman, as a history student, and as a future teacher, I cannot accept in silence a president who spreads racism and sexism, who is in favor of more exploitation of workers. Okay, he was elected democratically, and I'm in favor of democracy. I accept that. But he needs to know that his government will be watched very closely by all the movements that he wants to destroy. He already made clear that he wants to do away with all activism, and we have made it very clear that this is not going to happen, that we will resist all his policies of hate and prejudice.
Brazil's Workers' Party has said it will call on authorities to investigate the potential effect of false information in the presidential election. PT President Gleisi Hoffmann says the Brazilian electoral process was contaminated by the spread of fake news, and this had an effect on the final outcome. She believes this could be a new form of fraud. Meanwhile, the Workers' Party has also announced the creation of a resistance front against the incoming government to defend democracy.
I think that if there is one word, one verb to be conjugated at this moment, is to resist. That's why one of the decisions of our meeting was to unite all our forces with those of others to build an ample front of resistance for democracy and for the people's right against the government that is about to take power. The last speech of the candidate who was elected had nothing to do with democratic rule of law, with people's rights, with due legal process, meaning he will let Lula rot in jail. We even fear for the president's life.
The European Union wants Brazil's president-elect to consolidate democracy and respect the decision of the Brazilian people. EU spokeswoman Natasha Bertot commented on Brazil when asked if she thought Bolsonaro posed a threat to democratic values, given his admiration for the former military dictatorship and his racism. She confirmed that senior officials are to sign a congratulatory letter to Bolsonaro, who won the runoff election with 55% of the vote. In his first interview after winning the presidential election, Bolsonaro has said he may treat social movements as terrorists. One of the movements he referred to was the Landless Workers Movement, the MST. He said he is not interested in having any sort of dialogue with the members of social movements. Bolsonaro also said the new gun law will be a priority, as it will give civilians the right to carry weapons. He has also said that he supports the privatization of state companies. The newly elected president has announced he invited Judge Sergio Moro to serve on the country's Supreme Court. Moro was the judge responsible for prosecuting former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. This led to his imprisonment. The judge has not given an official answer, but he has already expressed his willingness to accept the offer to local media outlets. The various migrant caravans traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border continue to persevere despite the hardships. The group that crossed from Guatemala into Mexico on Monday is now close to reaching the town of Tapachula, and thousands of migrants from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador have decided to start the journey, fleeing from poverty and violence. All of this while the United States threatens to stop them. Let's hear from our correspondent in Mexico, Pablo Perez, who is following a group from this caravan.
Well, we're right here in the middle of the road between Ciudad Hidalgo, Chiapas, Mexico, and Tapachula, which is going to be the destiny for today trip of the migrant caravan. This is a small group. It's only about 800, 1,000 people strong, and they have chosen to stay here under the shadow of these tropical trees because the heat is too much for the mostly formed by women and small children caravan. Other group, mostly men, they have kept going, and they say, as far as we know, that they are already in Tapachula city, where they're going to establish themselves in the Tapachula's Central Park. They are gonna deliberate then what's gonna be their next step. But they are thinking of taking one day off at Tapachula to regain the forces. Remember that just yesterday they crossed the Suchiate River with great risk and opposition of the federal police, Mexican federal police. So they are exhausted now, and they only want to get to Tapachula to catch a breath, and then keep on going for over 1,000 miles, which is the way they have to go until the next border.
That was Pablo Perez from Ciudad Hidalgo. Bolivian President Evo Morales has slammed the U.S. government's decision to send 5,200 soldiers to the Mexican border in an attempt to stop the migrant caravan. In a tweet, Morales said, while thousands of Central American migrants escaped from hunger and violence caused by neoliberal exploitation imposed by the U.S. in their countries, Trump sends his troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. Trump has said that he is planning to sign an executive order to end birthright citizenship. In an interview with local media, Trump said the idea of people coming to the United States and having a baby to gain citizenship is ridiculous. If the executive order is made, babies born in the United States will no longer be automatically considered citizens. But Trump's plans have been refuted by House Speaker Paul Ryan. According to the Washington Post, Ryan said it was not possible to end birthright citizenship with an executive order. Currently, most of those born in the United States are entitled to citizenship as laid out by the Constitution and the courts. Coming up, we have more stories. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and my account at Carla G. Telesur. So give us a share and some hearts as well. We'll be back. Welcome back. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez believes amendments to the draft resolution on the blockade on Cuba will be rejected at the United Nations. 8 amendments proposed by the United States will be debated on Wednesday, while the vote will take place on Thursday at the UN General Assembly.
There is a new situation this year, which is a new State Department of the United States that has decided to present amendments against the resolution of the blockade, with the purpose of creating a pretext to harden this blockade against Cuba. This is a policy that has proclaimed and that the statement has the fact are implications to present an illusion about an international support for this policy and also to disrupt, consume time and hinder the resolution adoption.
Rodriguez also says the U.S. blockade continues to be a massive violation of Cubans' human rights. Let's listen to him.
The United States already know that it cannot prevent the adoption of forceful resolution with a major unanimity of the General Assembly, with that obsolete policy and anchored with the Cold War according to Geneva against the genocide crime. It is a human right violation of every citizen and internationally who transgresses the trade law and freedom of navigation, which constitutes an aggression act and economic warfare.
On other topics, Panama is issuing new tourism cards to allow Cuban citizens with ties to private businesses to enter the country visa-free and buy goods during a month-long stay. This new measure shows growing commercial ties between the two countries. Cuba is looking for more international investments and credit, now that aid from Venezuela has decreased due to sanctions imposed by the United States and the European Union. The country is also subject to a U.S. blockade. Currently, there are over 500,000 Cubans working in the island's private sector.
This step that we've taken, I believe that will strengthen the economic opening that you're seeing in Cuba. And following the country's rules and respecting the country's regulations and all their systems, it will make visits to Panama easier, because many Cubans are traveling. They travel to other countries, they return to their country, and they're setting up their own businesses. They're moving forward, and this facilitates this process.
3 ports that will give Bolivia access to sea have received international certification. The private ports of Aguirre, Gravetal, and Jennifer are located in the Paraguay-Paraná waterway. They supply at least half of the volume of Bolivia's international cargo, estimated at 10 million tons. President Evo Morales says this will improve the port's efficiency and the country's internal and external trade.
The international ports will be considered in the local route Hydrovia Paraguay and Panama, which will generate greater load movement from and towards Bolivia, in addition to attracting shipping companies that in the future can have permanent presence in our country, generating new sources of work that the exports of soybeans, vegetable oil, iron and imports as diesel, gasoline and cargo general can carry out their paperwork in the shortest possible time and be certified competent ports as Hydrovia Paraguay Panama ports.
Now to Colombia, where activists, academics and politicians are protesting against fracking in the region of Magdalena. They say that while the nation needs to exploit its resources, protecting the natural water sources is also vital. They say the region's aquifers would be in great danger given the amount of water that's needed for fracking. On Tuesday, at least 98 Venezuelans returned home from Peru as part of their Return to the Homeland plan. This new group gathered in the Venezuelan embassy in the city of Lima so they could head to the Jorge Chávez International Airport. They denounced their suffering from labor exploitation as well as discrimination in Peru. And another 250 Venezuelans are returning to their country from the Brazilian city of Boa Vista in Roraima. Boa Vista's mayor-elect has said he will apply restrictions to migrants when he takes office. The city will ask for criminal records as well as passports. The current group is returning with the support of the Venezuelan consulate. At least 23 condors have been poisoned in Patagonia, according to an environmental organization in Argentina. The non-profit organization Argentinian Birds says a banned substance was used to poison Andean condors across the Patagonian provinces. In the last year, more than 90 birds have been poisoned in the country. Condors are a kind of vulture, the largest flying birds in the world, and their population is declining fast. New campaigns in Bolivia are promoting an end to gender violence. This is due to the high number of femicides that are registered in the country.
Various government organizations have joined together to promote campaigns against violence to women.
There have been 100 femicides in our country. If we compare it to Spain, a country that has 4 times more people than Bolivia, Spain only had 48 femicides. That is less than half.
In Bolivia, an average of 100 femicides are reported per year. This means the violent death of a woman every 3 days, and almost always at the hands of their partner.
They can be our mothers, they can be our sisters, they can be our daughters, and it can happen to ourselves. We do not want to be killed just because we are women.
Men and children play an important role in stopping this. We have to be more conscious of protecting the rights of women. This must come from the family, the schools, the universities. It's fundamental that we change our culture.
According to the United Nations, violence against women starts in different forms: physical, sexual, psychological, but they eventually lead to death, which is almost always followed by impunity.
Latin America is the region with the largest number of femicides worldwide. We have to be ashamed of this. We are the most violent region. Evidently, there is something we have to do as a region and as a society. Bolivia is the 4th country with the largest number of femicides in the region after Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador.
Bolivia has established preventive legislation to deal with gender violence. It punishes 16 different types of violence. In 2016, the United Nations launched the Únete campaign with the color orange as its symbol.
Now to the Caribbean, where Dominica and China have signed a $120 million Eastern Caribbean dollars economic and technical agreement. This news comes after the United States threatened developing countries from doing businesses with China. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has dismissed suggestions that the island is being used by China to advance its influence globally. He added that Dominica has nothing to offer China but solidarity and friendship, and that those who heed the U.S. warnings are propagating foolishness. 1 week ago, the Calypso world was thrown into mourning with the death of Winston Bailey, the mighty Shadow. The Trinidadian musical legend was laid to rest on Tuesday with a funeral befitting a Calypso king. At the Queen Park Savannah, the traditional staging of the annual Dimanche Grass competition, which Shadow won in 2000, making him the Calypso king of that year. Shadow was conferred with the Doctorate of Letters from the UWI on Saturday, 4 days after his death. He requested that mourners wear white in contrast with his traditional all-black grab as a performance. Dios, ¿qué es eso?
Has been relevant for 5 decades. 70 to 80 hits. 80 to 90 hits. 90 to 2000 hits. And if he was here today, we would have had some more hits. That's right. Because that is the kind of fella that Winston Bailey was now. And I mean, I use the word was because I'm referring that to physical and flesh. But that man can't dead. That man immortalized himself in all their minds, Jed. That up to today, anything different is a Shadow vibes. And any baseline that bounces a different way is a Shadow vibes. You understand? We just talk about soca, but soca is drum and bass. Who is drum and bass? Shadow vibes. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, that's that news, but we'll take one last short break. Stay with us. And we're back. Tensions between police and Shia Muslims continue in Nigeria. At least 6 supporters of the movement of Nigeria have been killed since Saturday. This Tuesday, police have fired shots and tear gas against thousands of supporters of imprisoned Shiite cleric Ibrahim Saksaki, who has been in custody since December 2015. Reports say several bodies of civilians were on the ground after the clashes, but it is unclear whether they were dead or injured.
From the information I have, reliable information, that the army has given 9 corpses of people, the victims of yesterday, to police station in Asokoro, 3 in Gwagwalada, making 36 corpses now. Now 36 people were confirmed dead as a result of the yesterday's attack by the Guard Brigade. And it was Army Guard Brigade that killed us yesterday. And I issued a press statement in the morning yesterday that this is the information we had, that Guard Brigade were given order from above to kill us whenever we come to Abuja. Today has come to the end of the Arba'in symbolic trek, because today marked the 40th day. But protests will continue until our leader is free. Should anybody doesn't want to see us on the streets of Abuja and other places, free our leader as court order for his freedom.
Pirates have abducted 11 crew members from a container ship off the coast of Nigeria. According to media reports, the attackers boarded the MV Pomerania Sky bound for the Nigerian port of Onne. 8 of the abductees are Polish, while the nationality of the others is not yet known. Kidnappings and piracy in Nigeria and the Gulf of Guinea are very common. A South African lawyer has been shot dead while dropping his child off at school. According to the police, Pete Mihalik was in his vehicle when he was shot in the head and fatally wounded. Paramedics arrived on the scene but were unable to save him. The police have said that one suspect has been arrested in connection with the murder and is being questioned by detectives. South Sudan's rebel leader and former Vice President Riek Machar will return to the capital Juba this week to take part in a peace ceremony. It will be the first time he sets foot in the city since he fled 2 years ago when an earlier peace deal collapsed. South Sudan's civil war began in 2013 when the country's president accused Machar of plotting a coup. The war has resulted in thousands of deaths, mass rapes, and forced recruitment of child soldiers. At least 5 opposition supporters in Guinea have been injured in clashes with the police outside the home of the country's main opposition leader. The police had gone to the house of Selou Dalain Diallo to prevent him from joining an anti-government demonstration. The opposition has been protesting against what it calls a violation by the authorities of an agreement reached in August over the appointment of local government officials.
We need a government that respects the Constitution and the laws. Alpha Condé's government is a negation of the law and the Constitution of the Republic. Stop obeying Mr. Alpha Condé. He's no longer in the service of the people. He's in the service of a mob.
Syrian citizens were strongly repressed by Israeli troops when they were protesting over the municipal elections in the Golan Heights. Israeli forces opened fire on civilians during these protests. Syria is rejecting the vote organized by Israel to elect council members in the disputed territory. The government of Syria said the vote violates the United Nations resolutions and the Geneva Agreements.
Yesterday there was a general meeting and it was decided that it's forbidden to vote. It's forbidden for candidates to appear from the council because they do not represent us. They are boycotted. How will we ask them to meet our demands? How it is guaranteed that they are working for the good of their city? People are boycotting them.
We now go to Turkey, where President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced a plan to put an end to what he calls terrorism in Syria. Erdogan says his country will launch soon a new, more comprehensive and more effective operation in the region. The Turkish president has also explained that the Turkish army executed different raids in the area a few days ago.
We will not leave our forces where they are. We will destroy the terrorist structure east of the Euphrates River. We have established our plans and complete our preparation for that matter.
It is said, according to reports, that Tunisian suicide bomber was a young unemployed graduate. Relatives of Manguebla mourn her and say they are shocked about her decision to blow herself on Monday. They believe her jobless situation led to her action. Her attack left 17 people wounded. 8 years after the revolution that toppled Ben Ali, Tunisia's economy is stagnant and around a third of young graduates are unemployed. Foreigners are increasing their investments in Greece as the government has launched a visa plan that grants them a residency permit.
Lian Wemnin is 29 years old. She was born in Beijing. She is planning to spend 250,000 euros in apartments in Athens.
Here in Athens, with 250,000 euros, I can buy 2 or even 3 apartments. If I was in Beijing, I would only be able to spend the same amount of money in a 30 square meter single apartment. It's a big difference, isn't it?
Lian also wants access to a permanent residency, a visa given by the government to investors ready to spend 250,000 euros in real estate properties.
With the golden visa, I would be able to travel to more than 26 European countries. It's very convenient.
Lian is not the only one. There's a lot of foreign investors interested, real estate agents have confirmed.
Their main interest is to get the residence permit. After that, buyers get interest in investing even more, thanks to Greece's friendly environment.
Those buying properties don't use them for living purposes. They use platforms like Airbnb to rent it to tourists.
We see that every month the real estate market is improving more and more.
The increasing demand of real estate in Greece has provoked a price hike for properties that most locals can still not afford after 8 years of austerity.
Now in Greece, there are more opportunities to make business. The most important thing is that Greece is a beautiful country. It has beautiful beaches, and the weather is really good.
After almost a decade of crisis, Greece's economy is slowly recovering. Now the main challenge is that locals benefit from this, and not only the elites.
African and European leaders have gathered in Berlin for a meeting hosted by German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The Compact Africa Summit is aimed at attracting private investment along with technical and financial assistance to Africa. Merkel has emphasized her focus on this, as experts say she's backing efforts to boost prosperity in the continent to cut African migration to Europe. The Secretary General of NATO says the new military exercises in Norway do not amount to a new Cold War. This comes as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has more than 50,000 assets from 31 countries in the Trident Juncture exercise in Norway. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has also demanded that Russia fulfill the nuclear agreement that it has with the United States, which was highly criticized by U.S. President Donald Trump. Russia has rejected these exercises, saying they are a threat to regional security.
Environment, and NATO has to be sure that we continue to deliver credible deterrence in a more unpredictable world, and therefore we need to have a bigger exercise and also to exercise how to defend all allies against any threat, and that's exactly what we do with this exercise.
And that brings us to the end of this news brief, but this and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. Remember to follow our complete coverage of the vote on the Cuban blockade this couple of days. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Telesur, connecting the Global South.